doomsday without making a dent, I said, then hissed at him. He blanched. Oh, shit! Yeah, that about sums it up, I said. Being a vampire had its perks. As I entered the basement, Tava looked up from her post near the portal, which shimmered like a nebula between two large standing stones. She glanced at the goblin, then at me. I didn't think he was supposed to be here. She let her words drift off as I tossed Mr. Unlucky on the floor. No way can we allow him to go back through the portal. I suggest you take an early lunch, I said. Tava blinked, then broke into a toothy grin. She wasn't as picky about her meals as I was. Thanks, boss, she said as I turned to go back upstairs. The goblin let out a startled cry behind me, cut off in mid-shriek. I stopped for the briefest of moments. The basement was silent except for the faint sound of Tava, lapping gently. I quietly shut the door and returned to the bar. There was no sense in taking a chance the goblin might run back to Otherworld or Estriel and spread tales. Neither the Queen nor the tattered remnants of the OIA knew we were still here, and we wanted to keep it that way. The Wayfarer was rocking. When I'd first been assigned to work the bar, I resigned myself to serving a bunch of drunken sots and sad-assed streetwalkers. But to my relief and surprise, most of the Fae who came to the Wayfarer drank enough to have fun, but not enough to cause problems. The full-blooded humans who came in were pretty good sorts, too. They spent good money to fritter away the evening in the presence of various Fae and Earthside soups. All except for the fairy maids, that is. And they only irritated me because they were cheap. Cheap as in, buy one drink and nurse it half the night while taking up valuable booth space. They were there for one reason and one reason only, to be taken advantage of by some pussy-hungry denizen of Otherworld. To be honest, I felt more pity for them than irritation. It wasn't their fault they were vulnerable to she-pheromones, and if anybody should have exercised restraint, it was my father's people. We all knew what could happen when sex worked its way into the mix, but a number of humans didn't understand. Over the months, however, I'd learned to keep my mouth shut. On the rare occasions when I tried to dissuade a love-struck fairy maid from her quest, I'd been met by disbelief, and a few times by outright anger. With the goblin taken care of, I returned to the counter just in time to see Camille and Trillian wander through the door. My oldest sister, Camille, was gorgeous, with long raven hair and violet eyes. She was curvy and buxom, and dressed a la designer BDSM, decked out in a leather bustier and flowing chiffon skirt. Trillian looked like an escapee from The Matrix with his black suede duster, black jeans, and black turtleneck. A Spartan, one of the darker-natured cousins to the elves, his clothing and skin blended together in one long jet silhouette, while his silver hair hung free to his waist. Wavy and coiling, it had taken on a life of its own, that hair. As a couple, they sure turned heads. I waited until they chose a booth and then wiped my hands on the bar rag and tossed it to Cassandra. I'm taking a break, I said, heading over to join them, carrying a goblet of blossom wine for Camille and a scotch on the rocks for Trillian. I could do without the Spartan, but I needed to talk to Camille. She glanced up as I slid in beside her and gave her a quick squeeze. Trillian flashed me a brief smile. As usual, I ignored him. What did you find out? I asked her. She leaned back, shaking her head. They've disappeared. Trillian looked all over but couldn't find any sign of either father or Aunt Rethwar. Their houses were deserted. Everything gone. Shit. I stared at my nails. They were perfect, and they always would be. Anybody have any idea where they went? Trillian spoke up then. No. I checked with all my usual sources without any luck. Then I managed to scare up a few who weren't happy to see me. They owe me big and were hoping to stay hidden a little bit longer. But nobody seemed